bothering me as much as they used to before. Which brings me to a conversation that I had with my friend today. I had two conversations. I had a conversation with a friend that used to go to church. That was descarriado, how you say, like backslidden? Backslidden, and they were thanking me for not giving up on them because I could be a pain in the neck. You know what I mean? And I really try really, really hard to not utter things, but they just, like, it's like, mommy, like, I can't help it. And I would tell them, I was like, listen, I'm not going to stand up to you no more. You know you shouldn't be acting crazy. And I'm just sick of having this conversation with you. I'm not going to say it anymore. But every once in a while, like, it's just one of those things. We're talking for 10 minutes, and I'm going to bring it up. I don't know why I'm like this, and I get annoyed with myself, but it is what it is. But he was telling me, like, Angie, thank you for not giving up on me, because if it wasn't for your constant nagging, then I know that I wouldn't have been moved to at least want to pray one more time. And that one more time became a constant need in his life. So, and then I talked to another friend, and then I had to be honest, and I felt it. I'm telling you, I felt it so bad that I still feel the fire from the back of my ears while I'm like here, because I said to them, I was like, if I'm going to be your friend, I'm going to let you know that everything that's happening in your life right now is happening for a reason, and I'm going to tell you why. It's easier to see things from the outside than it is when you're in the mess, right? I can watch. We can see a hurricane from the satellite pictures, right? And we can see the whole thing occurring. But when you're in the midst of the hurricane, you don't see anything. You just see stuff flying around. It's chaotic, you're confused, and you're not well. You know, but when you're stepping outside of it, so I was like, listen, I'm going to step outside of the box, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And so I felt bad. Well, not really, I don't feel bad. But I told her, I was like, I'm telling you this because if I call myself your friend, I have to tell you the truth. Just like I would expect you to tell me the truth. And the things that you're doing are not the examples of a person that serves God. And I know that you're going through the hard time, but the Word of God says that this too shall pass. And if you were good about it, saying it before to other people, you need to be good about it to say it to yourself now. And so, you know, I know she wanted to run out of that phone call. Like, I could feel her, like, oh, I gotta go, you know. And I said, I love you, and I'll continue to pray for you, but you need to understand that you are treading on some serious and dangerous ground. And if I had time enough to tell you that you were gonna, that you have time to be a girl about your life, then fine. You know, like I could have told you, but you don't have no time, so get your act together. I love you, keep praying, amen. God bless her. And then, but I felt that, and I was contemplating on Jesus and all of the things that we're going to learn about what he did and how he spoke. And he spoke with urgency. He came here to complete in 3 years what the Bible in the Old Testament was covering for thousands of years. Does that mean? So we can sense that in Jesus there was a sense of urgency. And when he couldn't explain it full frontal, like, you know what I mean? He started to explain it in parables. And when he couldn't explain it in parables anymore because they didn't want to believe him, he started to talk to just the intimacy of the group of the guys. You know what I mean? And then when he couldn't do that anymore, he had to give himself into the real purpose as to why he came on earth, which was to die. But he did it all in an urgency. He only ministered for 3 years. We're estimating 3 years. A ministry that changed our clock. Our calendar was BC and AD. It is founded on him. Everything is founded on Jesus. And when Jesus spoke, he spoke with an urgency. And he spoke with a purpose. And everything that he did, sometimes he healed the person by spitting on the floor, taking the ground and putting it in his eyes. You know, sometimes he just said the word and he was healed. Sometimes he touched them. Sometimes he stood from afar and he healed them just by saying the word. So Jesus did everything with a purpose. He didn't do everything the same way. He was not monotonous in that way. But he did come to do the one thing that we needed the most, which was to save us. And so we see that his life is nothing but a pattern. Hey, welcome. Hello. We see we're on page 62. into 7 periods of Jesus. I believe it's 7. Let me make sure. No, period, 8 periods of Jesus. And we begin with the preview of Jesus, where we see it, and I want you to keep in mind that each section in page 62, we're going from 62 to page 78, we're going to keep going back to this because this kind of outlines a perfect pattern of Jesus' life. And in John, Matthew, and Luke, we see that, first of all, not every story is all in the same Gospels. They're not all in the same. Some of them remember them, some of them don't. About 40 years had passed by before they actually wrote the Gospels. Everything that was being said was being passed on by mouth. These apostles were just saying stories about what they remembered. And in fact, Luke was not an apostle. He actually got all of this information from everything that he was hearing. You see that new cool movie with Jim Caviezel, and he went to go visit Paul, and he was writing all that stuff? That was kind of like a cool rendition of what happened in the Gospel of Luke. But we see first Jesus' eternity. There's a preview of Jesus in John where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That's a preview. I'm just saying that he was there from the beginning. That I'm going to speak about this guy that was there from the beginning. Then we have him, Matthew, obviously speaking of his genealogy. And then we have Luke also speaking of kind of, not as well detailed as Matthew, but some of his genealogy and his ancestry. It was important for them to understand that Jesus was from the seed of Abraham and that he was from the lineage of King David. God made a promise to David that out of his lineage would come the Messiah. That's what he promised. That it's called David's covenant with the Lord. And this is important because I was taking Hebrew, and then because I cheat, right? So I went on Google, on YouTube. Well, I can't confess that I cheated, but I cheated a little bit. I went on Google. I found like this 40-minute Hebrew thing. And even in the lessons for learning Hebrew, they teach you David. Like, David is a very famous king and very devout figure in the ancestry of all the Jewish people. They don't know a lot of stuff. They don't know that much about Jesus, but they do know a lot about King David. So David was a very important and vital figure in Israel. He was the greatest king that to this day they continue to claim, because they haven't met Jesus yet, you know what I mean? But so his lineage was extremely important because we like authenticity. We as human beings, we like authentic things. We don't like, how many of you guys like buying the generic brands at the store? It just don't taste the same. Like sometimes you gotta buy this broke, but it's not as tasty as when you get the actual Chips Ahoy versus the Chips Not or whatever. like you like authentic things, and just like we like authentic things, so did the Jews. So it was important for some of the Gospels to establish the lineage and genealogy of Jesus and his claim to the throne. We are so fascinated by Meghan Markle. I'm not, but we're fascinated by Meghan Markle and Prince Harry and all those princes and all those whatever. And it's so majestic to watch, like the royalties. And it's always been a fascination to us. But we have to understand that Jesus didn't exactly carry himself like a regular king. But everything that he did, I had to stand up and tell my sister, but she wasn't too excited. I was getting it in my brain, but she wasn't. Everything that Jesus did was exactly the way it happened to other kings in the Old Testament. So it was important for these apostles to establish him that yes, he was the king. And he did everything that every other king did. He just didn't do it in the majesty and in the form that perhaps King David. We know the story of King David, right? How was he anointed?
What's his name? That guy came to Jesse's house, and he said, "I'm looking for the king." Mm-hmm. And then the guy presented all of his sons, and he was like, "No, it's not him. I have one more son who was raising the shepherds. He's not good looking, and he smells terrible." And he's like, bring him to me anyway. So then he anointed him as king.
So there you have it. I'm gonna explain why I brought up that story later, but this covenant was fulfilled through Jesus, and this is 2 Samuel 7. So there's an announcement later on the birth of Jesus, and this is period 1 of Jesus' early years. We see the annunciation to Mary. Mary, guess what? You're gonna have a baby. So you can understand that this was very very important, mind you, because it was prophesied in the Old Testament that it would be born of the Holy Spirit, and it had to happen that way. Can anybody tell me why Jesus had to be born in that way?
Well, I might be wrong, but let's see. I guess God wanted to make him with a human body so that he can go through what we go through, so that when he died and he cleared his sin, it's just, yeah,
Oh, you're done.
yeah.
No, partially true.
He was supposed to symbolize the sacrificial lamb, which is always supposed to be pure. It's supposed to be a male, so the only way that he could be actually pure was to be born of a virgin.
That's actually a good point. Purity. But because he was born in flesh, what is immediately attached to us as what's that? Sin. Our sin nature had to be immediately attached to us. So he couldn't come down here as a celestial being and defeat the spirit in that way. I mean, the flesh in that way. He had to be the sacrificial lamb, as Andre said. So in order to be a sacrificial lamb, you have to be in flesh. So he had to be born through a sinful person. Not that she was a sinner, but through a human being, and be born with that ability to sin. So that in this sinful body, he could defeat sin itself. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, I don't like bosses that are always in their office and never do anything. I don't like that. I like somebody to get down in the nitty-gritty with me and help me out, because that's what a real leader does. So Jesus was a perfect example of what a leader, a king, should have really been doing. David was loved because he fought alongside the soldiers, right? They loved him. He knew how to fight. He was alongside, and Jesus did the same thing. So he had to be born of a virgin, but he had to be born into that curse that we have. You know what I mean? You never teach a child to not share, right? You teach a child to share, because in their nature, they're not going to share. They don't want to share what's not fine. So now we understand what sinful nature is, right? Can't help it. Sometimes I'm a mom. I don't want to share my cupcake, so I hide. Yeah. So, y'all can judge me all y'all want, but that's just the way it is. Relax. I just want to enjoy a cupcake by myself. Nobody talk to me. What's up?
I saw a video on Facebook. A lady, she's in the closet eating Twizzlers, and she's like, "They never go away." And she points the camera at the door, and her hand is like.
It's so sad, but it has to happen. Like you have to. You're gonna remind me when you guys have kids. You're gonna remember me. But it's like, can I have a cupcake? See, like that right now. Now that you guys are young and you have no kids, enjoy cupcakes by yourself. And if your friends tell you, "Hey, can I have a piece?" you say no, because you need to enjoy it now while you can. Just saying. Side note, put that in your pocket. If you learned anything today, don't share. But you can understand that in that we have a sinful nature. And Jesus had to be born in that way so that he can defeat sin in the flesh. That's how he defeated it. Obviously, he walked in the Spirit. Obviously, he trusted in God. He was God. 100% man, 100% God. But he was a man. And so, the birth of Christ is so beautiful. And when we get to Matthew and the earliest, there's so many things within just his birth and how he ended up in Bethlehem, because that's what the scriptures had said in the Old Testament, how he came out of Egypt, how all of this makes sense. Everything had a purpose.